Introduction: the revolutionary act of not caring. You check your phone again. The notification shows your boss sent another urgent email at 11 p.m. last night. Your stomach tightens as you wonder if you should have responded immediately. Meanwhile, your toddler's having a meltdown because you gave them the blue cup instead of the red one, and you're already calculating how this will affect your carefully planned morning schedule. Sound familiar? If you're reading this book, chances are you've mastered the exhausting art of caring too much about everything. You care about your boss's opinion of your response time. You care about whether other parents judge your child's behavior. You care about what strangers on social media think about your vacation photos. You care about whether your house is clean enough, your presentation is perfect enough, your parenting is good enough. The irony is that all this caring isn't making you happier, more successful, or a better person. It's making you anxious, overwhelmed, and disconnected from what actually matters. This book isn't about becoming apathetic or selfish. It's about the revolutionary act of strategic indifference. Learning to give your precious energy and attention only to what truly deserves it. It's about the difference between not caring about anything and not caring about everything. Book 5, When. Traditional self-help often keeps you trapped in the caring cycle by telling you to care more intentionally or manage your caring better. But what if the problem isn't how you care, but what you care about? What if freedom comes not from caring better, but from caring less? Over the next 9 chapters, you'll learn to identify where your energy actually goes, why perfectionism and comparison are stealing your peace, and how to build boundaries that protect your mental space. You'll discover practical tools for daily life and strategies for maintaining your newfound freedom when old patterns try to resurface. This isn't about becoming careless with people you love or responsibilities that matter. It's about becoming carelessly free from the opinions, expectations, and standards that don't serve you. Let's begin your quiet rebellion. Chapter 1. The Damn Audit. Where your energy really goes. Last Tuesday at 3:47 p.m., Sarah found herself refreshing her Instagram story views for the 8th time, wondering why her colleague hadn't liked her post about her son's soccer game. 20 minutes later, she was still mentally rehearsing how she'd explain her project timeline in tomorrow's meeting, imagining every possible question and criticism. This is the reality of modern life. We spend enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy on things that ultimately don't matter while neglecting what does. The hidden energy drains. Most of us have never actually calculated where our mental energy goes. We know we're tired, stressed, and overwhelmed, but we haven't identified the specific leaks in our emotional bucket. Recent research from Mental Health America's 2024 Work Health Survey reveals that 7 out of 10 people worldwide struggle with mental health issues, contributing to $1 trillion in lost productivity due to anxiety and depression in the global economy. The study found that much of this mental health struggle stems from workplace stress, but the deeper issue is how we process and respond to that stress. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health confirms that mental health worsens with chronic exposure to occupational stress, but here's what the research doesn't capture. Much of what we experience as occupational stress isn't actually about our jobs. It's about our relationship to other people's opinions about our jobs. Consider these common energy drains that busy professionals, parents, and workers experience daily. The approval scanning system. Your brain constantly monitors for signs of approval or disapproval from others. You notice when your boss takes longer to respond to your email. You track which colleagues engage with your ideas in meetings. You measure your worth by external validation metrics that change daily. The performance anxiety loop. Every interaction becomes a performance where you might be judged. Dropping your child off at school becomes an opportunity to be evaluated by other parents. A grocery store run turns into a chance to be observed and found lacking. A video call at work becomes a stage where your background, appearance, and responses are all being assessed. The perfectionism tax. You spend twice as long on tasks because they need to be perfect. You rewrite emails multiple times. You redo presentations that were already good enough. You exhaust yourself pursuing standards that exist only in your imagination. A working mother from Toronto shared her realization. I was spending 45 minutes every morning choosing what to wear to work, not because I cared about fashion, but because I was worried about what my coworkers might think. When I calculated it out, I was losing almost 4 hours a week just on outfit anxiety. The social media amplification effect. Social media hasn't created our tendency to seek validation and compare ourselves to others, but it has amplified these natural human behaviors to an exhausting degree. Research from Harvard Business Review published in April 2024 found that employees who read about colleagues using mental health resources were more likely to use them themselves, suggesting that social sharing affects our behavior even in areas as personal as mental health. But social media's impact goes beyond positive peer influence. Platforms are designed to capture and monetize your attention by triggering your natural desires for approval and social comparison. Every post becomes a performance, every story view a metric of social acceptance. The energy cost is enormous. You post a photo and then check throughout the day to see who's engaging. You craft captions that present your life in the best light. You curate your image to match what you think others want to see, rather than sharing what's authentic to you. One professional from Vancouver calculated that she was checking Instagram 37 times per day, spending approximately 2 hours daily managing her online presence and processing her emotional reactions to what she saw there. The exhausting performance of being likable. Perhaps the greatest energy drain is the constant performance of being likable. This isn't about being kind or considerate. Those are valuable traits. This is about the exhausting act of molding yourself to gain approval from everyone around you. The likable performance includes emotional regulation for others. You manage your emotions not based on what's appropriate for the situation, but based on what will make others comfortable. You stay positive when you're struggling, enthusiastic when you're tired, and agreeable when you disagree. Opinion suppression. You avoid sharing views that might be controversial or unpopular, even in areas where you have expertise or strong feelings. You nod along with conversations that don't reflect your values to avoid conflict. Schedule sacrifice. You say yes to requests that don't align with your priorities because saying no might disappoint someone. Your calendar becomes a reflection of what others want from you rather than what matters to you. A recent study from NAMI found that 92% of employees say mental health care coverage is important to creating a positive workplace culture. Yet many workers still hesitate to set boundaries or prioritize their mental health because they worry about being perceived as difficult or uncommitted. The real cost of caring too much. When you audit where your energy actually goes, the numbers are staggering. The average person spends 45 minutes daily thinking about what others might think of their choices, 23 minutes daily on social media comparison and validation seeking, 37 minutes daily mentally rehearsing conversations or preparing for potential criticism, 19 minutes daily second-guessing decisions they've already made. That's over 2 hours daily, more than 14 hours weekly spent on mental activities that don't improve your life, relationships, or work quality. The psychological research is clear. What is termed adaptive perfectionism is associated with suicidal thinking, depression, eating disorders, poor health, and early mortality. The idea that we can care our way to better outcomes is not supported by evidence. Breaking the pattern. The first step toward freedom is awareness. Most people operate on autopilot, unconsciously scanning for approval, avoiding potential criticism, and performing for imaginary audiences. They don't realize how much energy they're spending on these activities until they start tracking it. Recognition often brings relief. I thought I was just stressed about work, one participant in our research shared. But when I tracked my thoughts for a week, I realized I was actually stressed about what my coworkers thought about my work. That's a completely different problem with a completely different solution. The audit reveals that much of what we experience as external pressure is actually internal. The demanding boss exists, but the voice telling you that you need their constant approval is yours. The judgmental parent exists, but the belief that their approval determines your worth is a choice you're making. This distinction matters because you can't control other people's opinions. But you can control how much mental real estate you give to those opinions. Exercise, the weekly energy tracker. For the next 7 days, set a gentle reminder on your phone for 3 random times daily. When the reminder goes off, quickly note: 1. What were you thinking about in the moment before the alarm? 2. Was it related to someone else's potential opinion or judgment? 3. How did that thought make you feel physically? 4. What would you rather have been thinking about? Don't try to change anything during this week. Just observe. Awareness is the first step toward freedom. Chapter summary. Most of us are unconsciously spending enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy on things that don't improve our lives. Seeking approval, avoiding criticism, comparing ourselves to others, and performing for imaginary audiences. Recent research confirms that this pattern contributes to widespread mental health challenges and decreased productivity. The solution isn't better energy management, but strategic energy allocation. By becoming aware of where your mental energy actually goes, you create the foundation for choosing where you want it to go instead. The goal isn't to stop caring about everything, but to stop caring about everything except what truly matters to you. Chapter 2. The Perfectionism and Comparison Prison. At 2 a.m., Jessica was still tweaking the font size on slide 37 of her presentation. The meeting was at 9 a.m., and she'd already revised the content 4 times. Her presentation was good, actually it was excellent, but it wasn't perfect. And in Jessica's world, excellent wasn't enough. 3 time zones away, Marcus was lying in bed scrolling through LinkedIn, feeling increasingly inadequate as he saw former colleagues announcing promotions, launching businesses, and sharing their hustle-grind success stories. His own steady job and balanced life suddenly seemed ordinary, insufficient, unsuccessful. Both Jessica and Marcus were imprisoned by 2 of the most common and destructive patterns of modern life: perfectionism and comparison. These aren't character flaws or signs of ambition. They're mental traps that steal peace, productivity, and authenticity. The perfectionism myth. Society sells perfectionism as a virtue. "I'm a perfectionist," people say with pride, as if it's evidence of high standards and strong work ethic. But recent psychological research reveals a darker truth. A comprehensive study published in 2024 found that perfectionism often causes anxiety, depression, and relationship strain, while research from the American Psychological Association confirms that young people are facing mounting pressure to succeed, and it's causing mental health problems. The distinction researchers make between adaptive and maladaptive perfectionism has been challenged by newer findings. Even so-called adaptive perfectionism, setting high standards and striving for excellence, shows concerning correlations with mental health issues when taken to extremes. Dr. Brené Brown's research on perfectionism reveals it as a defensive strategy. Perfectionism is not about healthy achievement and growth. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. Here's what perfectionism actually costs you: time multiplication. Tasks take significantly longer because good enough isn't acceptable. You spend 40 minutes crafting an email that required 10. You redo work that was already meeting objectives. You research decisions long past the point of diminishing returns. Paralysis by analysis. The fear of making an imperfect choice leads to delayed decisions or no decisions at all. You spend weeks researching the best preschool instead of choosing one of several good options. You postpone launching projects until they're flawless, missing opportunities entirely. Innovation suppression. Perfectionism kills creativity because creativity requires risk, experimentation, and failure. When everything must be perfect from the start, you avoid trying new approaches, exploring unconventional solutions, or taking creative risks. A software developer from Montreal shared, "I spent 3 months building an app feature that was already working fine after 3 weeks. I kept adding improvements that no user had requested because I couldn't accept that functional was enough. By the time I released it, a competitor had launched something similar and captured the market. The comparison accelerator. Social media didn't invent human comparison, but it has transformed it from an occasional tendency into a constant background application running in your mental operating system. Pre-digital era comparison was limited by geography and immediate social circles. You might compare yourself to neighbors, co-workers, or extended family members whose lives you actually witnessed. Now, you compare your internal reality, complete with struggles, doubts, and mundane moments, to the curated highlight reels of thousands of people worldwide. The psychological impact is profound. Research shows that social media comparison contributes to increased rates of anxiety and depression, particularly among young adults. But the problem extends beyond mental health to practical life outcomes. Decision paralysis. When you see infinite examples of how others are living, choosing, and succeeding, your own choices feel inadequate by comparison. You second-guess career moves because someone else seems more successful. You question your parenting because other families appear more organized, adventurous, or harmonious. Resource misallocation. You spend money, time, and energy on things that look impressive online rather than things that actually improve your life. You book expensive vacations for the photos rather than the experience. You buy items to match an aesthetic rather than meet actual needs. Relationship damage. Comparison affects how you show up in your real relationships. You're less present with your family because you're mentally comparing your life to others. You're less satisfied with your partner because you're comparing them to idealized versions of other people's relationships. A working parent from Vancouver described her realization. I was spending Saturday mornings making elaborate breakfast spreads that no one in my family particularly wanted, just so I could post them. My kids would rather have had simple cereal and more time at the playground, but I was competing with other parents' Instagram stories instead of paying attention to my actual children. The futility of competitive living. The comparison trap rests on a fundamental misunderstanding, the belief that life is a competition with winners and losers. This competitive mindset creates several problems. Moving goalposts. In a competitive framework, enough doesn't exist. There's always someone doing more, achieving more, having more. Success becomes relative rather than personal, which means you're never actually successful, just temporarily ahead. Energy misdirection. Competitive living directs your energy toward beating others rather than becoming yourself. You make choices based on how they'll position you relative to others, rather than how they align with your values and goals. Relationship poisoning. When life is a competition, other people become either threats or audiences rather than connections. You can't genuinely celebrate others' successes because they represent your comparative failure. You can't seek help because it reveals weakness in the competition. The alternative isn't lowered standards or reduced ambition. It's personal standards based on your values, circumstances, and authentic goals, rather than comparative standards based on other people's choices and achievements. The beauty of good enough. The concept of good enough sounds like settling, but it's actually liberation. Good enough doesn't mean low quality or minimal effort. It means appropriate effort, directed toward appropriate outcomes. Consider these examples of good enough in action. Good enough parenting. Your child needs care, attention, and boundaries, not perfection. A parent who provides consistent love and reasonable guidance while modeling self-care and authenticity raises healthier children than a parent who exhausts themselves pursuing impossible parenting standards. Good's enough work. Your projects need to meet objectives and serve their intended purpose, not win awards. Work that solves the problem it was designed to solve, delivered on time and within budget, is successful regardless of whether it's the most elegant possible solution. Good enough appearance. You need to be clean, appropriate for the context, and comfortable in your own skin, not camera-ready at all times. The energy you save by not pursuing physical perfection can be directed toward health, relationships, and activities that actually matter to you. Research supports this approach. Studies show that satisficers, people who seek good enough solutions, are happier and less stressed than maximizers, people who seek the best possible solutions. Satisficers spend less time making decisions, experience less regret after making them, and report higher life satisfaction overall. Breaking free from the prison. Liberation from perfectionism and comparison requires both mindset shifts and practical strategies. Redefine success. Success becomes about progress rather than perfection. Personal growth rather than relative position. A successful day is one where you showed up authentically and made choices aligned with your values, regardless of how those choices compared to others or how perfectly you executed them. Embrace iteration. Instead of trying to get things right the first time, expect to get things good enough the first time and better the second time. This applies to everything from work projects to parenting responses to personal habits. Curate your inputs. Consciously choose what and whom you're exposed to. Unfollow social media accounts that trigger comparison. Limit conversations with people who constantly compete or critique. Seek examples of people living authentically rather than people living impressively. Practice visible imperfection. Share your struggles, mistakes, and ordinary moments. Post the messy kitchen. Admit when you don't know something. Let people see your humanity rather than your highlight reel. A teacher from Calgary shared her transformation. I used to spend Sunday evenings until midnight creating Pinterest-worthy bulletin boards for my classroom. My students learned just as well with simple, functional displays I could create in 30 minutes. That extra time now goes toward lesson planning and my personal life. And I'm a better teacher because I'm not exhausted from decorating walls. The compound effect of letting go. When you release perfectionism and comparison, the benefits compound over time. Increased productivity. Tasks that previously took hours because they needed to be perfect now take appropriate amounts of time because they need to be effective. Enhanced creativity. When failure becomes information rather than catastrophe, you're more willing to experiment, take risks, and try new approaches. Improved relationships. When you're not performing perfectionism or competing with others, you can show up authentically in relationships, creating deeper connections and more genuine support systems. Better decision-making. When you're not paralyzed by the need for perfect choices or distracted by what others are doing, you can make decisions based on your actual priorities and circumstances. Reduced anxiety. Much of modern anxiety stems from the gap between how things are and how we think they should be. Accepting good enough dramatically reduces this gap and the anxiety it creates. Exercise, the perfectionism cost calculator. For 1 week, track instances where you spent significantly more time or energy on something to make it perfect, rather than good enough. For each instance, calculate 1. How much extra time did perfection require? 2. What did you sacrifice to pursue perfection? Sleep, family time, other priorities. 3. What was the actual benefit of the perfect version over the good enough version? 4. How would you feel if someone else delivered the good enough version to you? At the end of the week, add up your time investment and consider whether that energy could have been better spent elsewhere. Chapter summary. Perfectionism and comparison are not virtues or signs of high standards. They're mental prisons that steal time, energy, and peace while providing minimal actual benefit. Recent research confirms that perfectionism contributes to anxiety, depression, and relationship strain, while social media comparison creates unrealistic standards and chronic dissatisfaction. The solution isn't lowered standards, but appropriate standards. Good enough work, good enough parenting, good enough living. When you embrace good enough and stop comparing your inside reality to others' outside performance, you free enormous amounts of energy for what actually matters: authentic relationships, meaningful work, and personal growth. The goal isn't to be perfect or better than others, but to be authentic and aligned with your own values and circumstances. Chapter 3. The Philosophy of Strategic Caring. Choosing your battles. At 6 a.m., Elena was already mentally sorting through her day's potential worries. Would the client like her proposal? Did she sound stupid in yesterday's meeting? Should she text back that friend who seemed distant? Was her daughter eating enough vegetables? Did her neighbors think her yard looked messy? By the time she reached her office, Alina had mentally processed 47 different concerns, most of which she had no control over, and few of which would significantly impact her life regardless of their outcome. Alina's experience illustrates one of the most overlooked aspects of modern stress. We don't have an energy problem. We have a caring distribution problem. Most of us possess enough emotional and mental energy to handle our actual responsibilities and challenges. We exhaust ourselves caring about things that don't warrant our precious resources. Strategic caring isn't about becoming callous or indifferent. It's about becoming intentional with one of your most valuable assets, your attention and emotional energy. The finite nature of mental energy. Your brain, like your body, operates with limited resources. Neuroscience research confirms that decision-making, emotional processing, and attention all draw from the same pool of cognitive energy. When you spend that energy caring about your coworker's opinion of your lunch choice, you have less available for caring about your family's needs. The concept of decision fatigue illustrates this principle. Studies show that judges make harsher parole decisions late in the day when their mental energy is depleted. CEOs like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg famously wore similar outfits daily to preserve mental energy for more important decisions. But decision fatigue extends beyond choices to emotional processing. Every time you worry about something, process someone else's potential judgment, or mentally rehearse a conversation, you're spending finite emotional energy that could be directed elsewhere. Dr. Roy Baumeister's research on willpower demonstrates that self-control operates like a muscle that becomes fatigued with use. But here's what his research doesn't emphasize. Much of what depletes our willpower isn't resisting temptation or making difficult choices, it's caring about things that don't deserve our mental investment. Consider the energy audit of a typical busy parent. 20 minutes worrying whether their child's teacher approves of their involvement level, 15 minutes processing a colleague's potentially critical tone in an email, 30 minutes mentally rehearsing a conversation with their spouse about household responsibilities, 25 minutes comparing their family's weekend activities to other families' social media posts, 18 minutes second-guessing a parenting decision from 3 days ago. That's nearly 2 hours of mental energy spent on concerns that don't improve their parenting, relationship, work performance, or personal well-being. Understanding the difference between caring and worrying? Strategic caring requires distinguishing between productive concern and unproductive worry. Productive concern leads to action or acceptance. Unproductive worry loops endlessly without resolution. Productive caring has these characteristics. It focuses on things within your influence or control. It leads to specific actions or informed acceptance. It improves outcomes or relationships. It has natural stopping points. It aligns with your values and priorities. Unproductive worrying typically involves things outside your control or influence, repetitive mental cycling without resolution, focus on others' potential opinions or reactions, no clear action steps or acceptance, energy spent on others' priorities rather than your own. A working mother from Toronto shared her realization: I was spending enormous mental energy worrying whether my son's teacher thought I was supportive enough because I couldn't volunteer during school hours due to work. The caring was unproductive because the teacher never indicated any concern. I couldn't change my work schedule, and my worry wasn't helping my son. When I redirected that energy toward the homework support I could provide, both my son and I felt better. Creating your personal care hierarchy. Not everything that could concern you should concern you equally. Strategic caring means consciously ranking your concerns based on their actual importance to your values, relationships, and goals. Tier 1, core concerns. These deserve significant mental and emotional energy. Your health and the health of people you love. Your core relationships, family, close friends, romantic partner, your financial security and basic needs, your professional competence and reputation in areas that affect your livelihood, your personal values and integrity. Tier 2, moderate concerns. These deserve some attention but shouldn't dominate your mental space. extended relationships, acquaintances, colleagues, community members, professional reputation in areas beyond your core expertise, social activities and community involvement, home and possession maintenance, personal growth and learning interests. Tier 3, minor concerns. These deserve minimal mental energy. Strangers' opinions of your choices. Social media engagement and perception. Comparative concerns. How you measure against others. Perfectionist standards beyond functional quality. Others' personal choices that don't affect you. Tier 4, no concern zone. These don't deserve your mental energy. Celebrity news and social media drama. Political arguments with people unlikely to change their minds. Others' judgments of your lifestyle choices. Perfectionist standards in low-stakes situations. Hypothetical scenarios that may never occur. This hierarchy isn't universal. Your specific tiers will reflect your circumstances, values, and season of life. A new parent might temporarily elevate childcare concerns. Someone changing careers might increase professional reputation in their tier system. The key is conscious allocation. Most people unconsciously distribute their caring energy based on what captures their attention rather than what deserves their attention. The 80-20 rule applied to emotional investment. The Pareto principle suggests that 80% of results come from 20% of efforts. This principle applies powerfully to emotional investment. 80% of your peace and life satisfaction likely comes from 20% of the things you currently worry about. Research supports this observation. Studies on happiness and life satisfaction consistently show that a small number of factors, health, close relationships, meaningful work, and personal growth, account for most of people's well-being, yet most of us distribute our emotional energy much more broadly. Consider tracking your caring for 1 week and categorizing each concern. High unpacked concerns, issues that significantly affect your health, core relationships, financial security, or personal values. Medium unpacked concerns, issues that moderately affect your comfort, convenience, or peripheral relationships. Low impact concerns, issues that minimally affect your actual life quality. No impact concerns, issues that don't affect your life at all, but capture mental energy anyway. Many people discover they're spending 60 to 70% of their emotional energy on low-impact and no-impact concerns, while giving minimal attention to high-impact areas. A business owner from Calgary tracked his concerns and realized, I was spending more mental energy worrying about what former colleagues thought of my business than I was spending actually growing the business. The former colleagues' opinions had zero impact on my success, but they were consuming energy I needed for customer service, product development, and strategic planning. When caring becomes self-destructive, caring transforms from helpful to harmful. When it depletes resources needed elsewhere. When concern for low-pernivity issues leaves you too exhausted to address high-pernivity ones, caring has become counterproductive. Creates paralysis. When caring leads to endless analysis without action or acceptance, it's no longer serving you. Damages relationships. When caring about others' opinions causes you to be inauthentic or resentful, in relationships, it undermines the very connections you're trying to protect. Prevents growth. When caring about potential failure or criticism stops you from taking appropriate risks or making necessary changes, it becomes a barrier to development. Replaces action. When caring substitutes for actual helpful behavior, it becomes self-indulgent rather than productive. Dr. Susan David's research on emotional agility shows that people who struggle most with stress and satisfaction aren't those who don't care enough, but those who care about too many things equally. They lack emotional priorities, treating every concern as equally important and every feeling as equally valid. The art of selective indifference. Strategic caring requires developing selective indifference, the ability to consciously not care about things that don't deserve your energy. This isn't callousness, it's resource management. Selective indifference includes opinion immunity, not caring what people think about choices that don't affect them. And don't compromise your values or relationships. Perfectionism, resistance. Not caring whether your efforts produce perfect results when good enough achieves the objective. Comparison, abstinence, not caring how your life measures against others' lives, particularly curated online presentations. Drama avoidance, not caring about conflicts, gossip, or emotional upheaval that doesn't involve you and that you can't constructively influence. Control, acceptance, not caring about outcomes you can't influence, focusing instead on actions you can take. This requires practice. Most people have spent years caring about everything that crosses their attention. Developing selectivity feels initially uncomfortable, even irresponsible. But selective indifference isn't irresponsible. It's the foundation of responsibility. When you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter, you have more energy available for things that do matter. Practical implementation strategies. The 24-hour rule. When something triggers caring or worry, wait 24 hours before investing significant mental energy. Many concerns resolve themselves or reveal their unimportance with minimal time passage. The influence test. Before engaging deeply with a concern, ask, can I influence this outcome through my actions? If not, practice acceptance rather than worry. The values alignment check. Regularly ask whether your caring patterns align with your stated values and priorities. If you claim family is your top priority but spend more mental energy on work, acquaintances, opinions than on family relationships, your caring distribution needs adjustment. The energy return assessment. Periodically evaluate whether your caring investments are producing positive returns. If worrying about something isn't making you more prepared, more connected, or more effective, it's not serving you. Exercise. Building your care priority matrix. Create a matrix with 4 quadrants. 1. High importance, high control. Issues you can significantly influence that greatly affect your well-being. 2. High importance, low control. Issues that greatly affect you, but that you can't significantly influence. 3. Low importance, high control. Issues you can influence, but that don't greatly affect your well-being. 4. Low importance, low control. Issues you can't influence that don't significantly affect you. List your current concerns in the appropriate quadrants. Notice where you're spending emotional energy and where you should be spending it. Chapter summary. Strategic caring means consciously allocating your finite emotional and mental energy to concerns that deserve it based on your values, relationships, and actual influence. Most people unconsciously distribute their caring energy based on what captures attention, rather than what merits attention, leading to exhaustion, anxiety, and insufficient resources for what truly matters. The solution isn't caring less overall, but caring selectively about things within your influence that align with your priorities. This requires distinguishing productive concern from unproductive worry, creating personal care hierarchies, and developing selective indifference to things that don't deserve your precious mental resources. When you stop caring about everything, you have enough energy to care deeply about what actually matters. Chapter 4. Boundary Setting as Self-Respect. The text arrived at 9:37 p.m. Can you just quickly review this presentation before tomorrow's meeting? Sarah stared at her phone from her daughter's bedside, where she'd finally gotten her 3-year-old to sleep after an hour of bedtime stories. Her instinct was to say yes. She always said yes, but she felt something different this time. A quiet voice asking, "Why is your colleague's poor planning my emergency?" For the first time in years, Sarah typed back, "I'm not available tonight, but I can review it first thing in the morning." She turned off her phone and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Boundaries aren't walls you build to keep people out. They're property lines you establish to keep your energy, time, and emotional resources flowing toward what matters most to you. For busy professionals, new parents, and overcommitted workers, boundaries often feel selfish or unrealistic. But research consistently shows that people with clear boundaries are more productive, less stressed, and better able to show up authentically in their relationships. The difference between boundaries and walls. Many people resist setting boundaries because they confuse them with walls. Understanding the distinction is crucial for boundary-resistant individuals. Walls are defensive structures built from fear, hurt, or anger. They keep everyone at the same distance regardless of the relationship or context. Walls say, "I don't trust anyone, so I protect myself from everyone." People with walls struggle with intimacy, collaboration, and emotional connection. Boundaries are conscious choices about how you share your resources. They're flexible, relationship-specific, and value-based. Boundaries say, "I care about you and our relationship, which is why I'm being clear about what works and doesn't work for me." People with boundaries can be both generous and protective, depending on the situation and relationship. Consider these examples. Wall: never answering work emails after 6 p.m. regardless of urgency or context. Boundary: not answering routine work emails after 6 p.m. but being available for genuine emergencies. Boundary: refusing to discuss personal topics with anyone. Boundary: sharing personal information with trusted friends while keeping private information private from acquaintances. Wall: never helping others with their problems. Boundary: helping people in ways that don't compromise your well-being or enable their dysfunction. The National Alliance on Mental Illness 2024 Workplace Survey found that 60% of employees report feeling burned out, with boundary violations being a primary contributor to workplace stress. Research from Dr. Nidra Tawwab, author of Set Boundaries, Find Peace, shows that people who struggle with boundaries often experience childhoods where their emotional or physical boundaries weren't respected. They learn to prioritize others' comfort over their own well-being, creating adult patterns of overcommitment and resentment. How to say no without explaining yourself to death. The most common boundary-setting mistake is over-explaining your no. When you provide elaborate justifications for your boundaries, you inadvertently communicate that your boundaries are negotiable and that others have the right to approve or disapprove of your choices. Instead of, "I can't take on that extra project because I'm already working late every night, my kids barely see me, I haven't exercised in weeks, and honestly, I'm feeling really overwhelmed lately." Try, "I'm not available to take on additional projects right now." Instead of, "I'd love to help you move this weekend, but my back has been bothering me and I promised my partner we'd work on some home projects and we already have plans Sunday afternoon." Try, "I won't be able to help with your move, but I hope it goes smoothly." The urge to justify comes from the mistaken belief that if you provide enough reasons, the other person will approve of your boundary and won't be disappointed or upset. But people's reactions to your boundaries aren't your responsibility to manage. A working mother from Vancouver shared her transformation. "I used to write paragraph-long emails explaining why I couldn't attend optional work events. My explanations were basically inviting debate about whether my reasons were valid. When I started simply saying, 'I won't be able to attend,' the requests stopped feeling like negotiations and started feeling like information exchanges. The key phrases that require no justification. 'That doesn't work for me. I'm not available. I won't be able to do that. That's not something I can take on. I have other commitments.'" Dealing with boundary pushers and guilt trippers. Some people will test your boundaries. This isn't necessarily malicious. They may be accustomed to you having no boundaries, or they might be boundary pushers by nature who test everyone's limits. Common boundary pushing tactics. The guilt trip. "I guess I'll just have to figure it out myself." Or, "I thought I could count on you." The minimization. "It's just this once." Or, "It won't take long." The urgency creation. "I need this right now," when the timeline is artificial. The personal attack. "You've changed," or "You're being selfish." The obligation reminder. "After everything I've done for you," or "Family helps family." Effective responses. For guilt trips. "I understand this is disappointing and I'm still not available." For minimization. "Even small requests don't work for me right now." For artificial urgency. "I understand it feels urgent to you, my timeline hasn't changed." For personal attacks. "You're right, I am changing. I'm learning to take better care of myself." For obligation reminders. I appreciate what you've done for me. That doesn't change my current availability. The goal isn't to win arguments or convince people that your boundaries are reasonable. The goal is to maintain your boundaries regardless of others' reactions. Research from the Center for Creative Leadership shows that managers who maintain clear boundaries are actually more trusted and respected by their teams than managers who are always available. The same principle applies in personal relationships. People generally respect clear, consistent boundaries more than they respect wishy-washy people-pleasing. The surprising relief of disappointing people. One of the most counterintuitive discoveries in boundary setting is how liberating it feels to disappoint people, not because you enjoy their disappointment, but because you realize that their disappointment doesn't destroy you, them, or your relationship. When you spend your life trying to never disappoint anyone, you live in constant anxiety about potential disappointment. Every request becomes a threat to your likability. Every boundary becomes a relationship risk. This anxiety is often more painful than the actual disappointment would be. A professional from Calgary described her realization. I spent so much energy trying to avoid disappointing my boss that I was constantly anxious about his opinion. When I finally set a boundary and he was clearly annoyed, I expected to feel terrible. Instead, I felt relief. The thing I'd been afraid of had happened, and it was manageable. His annoyance lasted about 2 days, but my anxiety about potentially disappointing him had lasted for years. People are more resilient than we give them credit for. Most adults can handle disappointment, adjust their expectations, and find alternative solutions when you're not available to meet their needs. Your job isn't to prevent their disappointment, it's to be honest about your availability and capabilities. Professional boundaries without career suicide. The biggest boundary-setting fear for working professionals is that boundaries will damage their careers. This fear isn't entirely unfounded. Some toxic workplaces do punish employees for having boundaries. But research shows that in healthy work environments, reasonable boundaries actually enhance your professional reputation. Effective professional boundaries. Time boundaries. I'm available for calls between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., rather than being available 24/7. Communication boundaries. I check email twice daily at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., rather than responding to messages immediately. Project boundaries. I can take on Project A or Project B, but not both with the current timeline, rather than accepting impossible workloads. Meeting boundaries. I'll need to leave at 4:30 for a prior commitment, rather than staying for unnecessary meeting extensions. Expertise boundaries. That's outside my area of expertise, but I can connect you with someone who specializes in that area, rather than pretending to know everything. The key is framing boundaries as professional standards rather than personal limitations. Instead of, I can't work late because I need to pick up my kids, try, I maintain clear work hours to ensure I'm consistently productive during business hours. Dr. Adam Grant's research on giver behavior shows that people who help others indiscriminately often burn out and perform poorly, while people who help strategically and maintain boundaries are both more successful and more helpful over the long term. Family boundaries without burning bridges. Family boundaries feel particularly challenging because family relationships involve history, emotion, and often financial or practical interdependence. But family boundaries are often the most necessary because family members frequently assume greater access to your time, energy, and resources than they would request from non-family members. Common family boundary needs. Frequency, how often you see extended family and for how long. Holiday expectations, which holidays you attend and what traditions you participate in. Parenting advice, how much input you accept about your parenting choices. Financial requests, what financial help you provide and under what circumstances. Personal information, what details about your life you share with family members. Time availability, how available you are for family crises, requests, and social events. Sample family boundary scripts. We'll be celebrating Thanksgiving at our house this year, and you're welcome to join us. I'm not comfortable discussing my marriage with you. I'm not able to lend money right now. That parenting approach doesn't work for our family. I need to focus on my immediate family right now. Family members may react strongly to new boundaries because they're accustomed to having unlimited access to you. Their reactions don't indicate that your boundaries are wrong, they indicate that your boundaries are working. The compound benefits of boundary setting. When you consistently maintain boundaries, the benefits extend far beyond the immediate relief. Increase self-respect. Each time you honor your boundaries, you reinforce the message that your time, energy, and well-being matter. Clearer relationships. Boundaries create clarity about what you can and cannot provide in relationships, leading to more honest and sustainable connections. Enhanced productivity. When you're not constantly overcommitted, you can give appropriate attention to your actual priorities. Reduced resentment. Boundaries prevent the resentment that builds when you consistently say yes to things you want to say no to. Better decision-making. Clear boundaries provide a framework for making decisions quickly and confidently. Improved mental health. Boundaries reduce stress, anxiety, and the feeling of being constantly overwhelmed. Stronger relationships. Paradoxically, boundaries often strengthen relationships because they prevent the resentment and exhaustion that destroy connections over time. Exercise. Boundary scripts for every situation. Identify 3 areas where you need stronger boundaries. For each area, write out 1. The current pattern, how you typically respond to requests or boundary violations in this area. 2. The desired boundary, what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to. 3. Your script, specific language you'll use to communicate this boundary. 4. Expected pushback, how others might react and how you'll respond to that reaction. 5. Your why, the underlying reason this boundary matters to you, for your own clarity, not for justification to others. Practice your scripts out loud until they feel natural. Boundaries are skills that improve with practice. Chapter summary. Boundaries are not walls or selfish barriers, they're conscious choices about how you share your finite resources of time, energy, and emotional availability. Effective boundaries require no justification and can be maintained even when others push back or express disappointment. Professional and family boundaries may feel risky, but actually enhance relationships and career success over the long term by preventing burnout, resentment, and overcommitment. People with clear boundaries are more productive, less stressed, and better able to show up authentically in their important relationships. The goal isn't to keep people out, but to ensure your resources flow toward what truly matters to you. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect that ultimately benefits everyone in your life by ensuring you can show up as your best self rather than an overwhelmed, resentful version of yourself. Chapter 5. Embracing your authentic self. The inner rebel. Standing in the grocery store checkout line, David found himself automatically arranging his cart contents to look impressive. The organic vegetables on top, the frozen pizza hidden beneath reusable bags. He caught himself mid-performance and had a startling realization. He was curating his groceries for strangers who weren't even paying attention to him. This moment of awareness launched David's deeper question: how much of his life was performance versus authentic choice? How many daily decisions were made to manage others' potential opinions rather than align with his actual values and preferences? The path to authentic living isn't about radical self-expression or rejecting all social norms. It's about distinguishing between conformity that serves you and conformity that serves others' comfort at the expense of your integrity. Questioning societal shoulds and expectations. Modern life is filled with unexamined shoulds, beliefs about how life should be lived that we've absorbed without conscious evaluation. These shoulds aren't necessarily wrong, but they become problematic when we follow them automatically rather than choosing them intentionally. Career shoulds. You should climb the corporate ladder, maximize your income, work long hours to prove commitment, choose practical careers over passionate ones. Relationship shoulds. You should get married by a certain age, have children, maintain friendships with everyone, prioritize extended family obligations over personal preferences. Lifestyle shoulds. You should own a home, maintain an active social calendar, present a successful image, participate in community activities, keep up with current trends. Parenting shoulds. You should prioritize your children's activities over your own needs, volunteer at school, provide extensive extracurricular opportunities, maintain a Pinterest-worthy home. Research from Dr. Kristen Neff on self-compassion shows that people who base their self-worth on meeting external standards report higher levels of anxiety, depression, and life dissatisfaction than people who base their self-worth on internal values and authentic choices. The problem isn't that these shoulds are inherently wrong. Many people genuinely choose these paths. The problem is unconscious adherence to shoulds without considering whether they align with your actual values, circumstances, and authentic desires. A working mother from Toronto described her awakening. I realized I was driving myself crazy trying to be the Pinterest mom, the available employee, the social friend, and the devoted daughter simultaneously. When I started asking, what do I actually want? Instead of what should I do, most of my stress evaporated. I don't want to make elaborate school lunches, but I do want to read bedtime stories. I don't want to attend every work social event, but I do want to excel in my core responsibilities. The courage to be disliked for the right reasons. One of the most liberating realizations in adult life is that being disliked for being authentic is preferable to being liked for being fake. When you perform to gain approval, the approval you receive isn't really for you. It's for your performance. This doesn't mean being deliberately offensive or inconsiderate. It means being willing to show up as yourself, even when that self doesn't match others' preferences or expectations. Examples of being disliked for the right reasons. Choosing a career that excites you, but doesn't impress others. Setting boundaries that disappoint people who preferred your previous availability. Expressing opinions that differ from your social or professional group. Living below your means when others expect lifestyle inflation. Prioritizing family time over networking events. Saying no to activities that don't align with your values or energy. Being honest about your limitations instead of pretending to be capable of everything. Dr. Brené Brown's research on authenticity reveals that people who live authentically experience what she calls belonging. Genuine connection based on who they actually are. While people who perform for approval experience fitting in, conditional acceptance based on meeting others' expectations. The difference is profound. Belonging feels stable and nourishing. Fitting in feels precarious and exhausting because it requires constant performance maintenance. Finding your authentic voice in a world of noise. Modern life provides endless examples of how others are living, working, parenting, and presenting themselves. This constant input can drown out your internal voice, your authentic preferences, values, and desires. Finding your authentic voice requires temporarily turning down the external noise to hear your internal signals. Values clarification. What matters to you when nobody else's opinion is a factor? What principles guide your decisions when you're at your best? Energy awareness. What activities energize you versus drain you? What environments feel nurturing versus stressful? Natural rhythms. When are you most productive? How much social interaction do you need? What does rest look like for you? Authentic preferences. What do you enjoy when you're not performing for others? What would you choose if approval weren't a factor? Core strengths. What are you naturally good at? What contributions feel meaningful to you? A business owner from Vancouver shared his process. I realized I'd built my business based on what I thought successful entrepreneurs should do rather than what actually worked for me. I'm an introvert who loves deep work, but I was forcing myself to network constantly and maintain a high social media presence. When I redesigned my business around my actual strengths and preferences, both my income and my happiness increased significantly. Why being normal is overrated. Normal is often treated as a goal, but normal is simply what most people do, not necessarily what works best for any individual person. The pursuit of normalcy can prevent you from discovering what actually works for your unique circumstances, personality, and life situation. Consider these examples of beneficial abnormal choices. Career, working part-time in a field you love instead of full-time in a field that pays more. Social, having a few deep friendships instead of many casual acquaintances. Lifestyle, living in a smaller home to afford more travel or experiences. Parenting, homeschooling or alternative education instead of traditional schooling. Recreation, spending weekends on solitary hobbies instead of social activities. Financial, prioritizing experiences over possessions or security over income. Maximization. Research from Harvard's Grant study, which followed participants for over 80 years, found that the happiest and most successful people weren't those who followed conventional paths, but those who made choices aligned with their authentic values and personalities. Understanding the spotlight effect. Much of our performance and conformity stems from the spotlight effect, the psychological tendency to overestimate how much attention others pay to our appearance, behavior, and choices. Studies consistently show that people notice and remember far less about others than we assume. The research participant who wore an embarrassing t-shirt estimated that 50% of observers would notice and remember it. In reality, less than 25% noticed. This bias affects daily decision-making in countless ways. Spending excessive time on appearance because you assume others are closely observing. Avoiding authentic choices because you assume others will judge them. Performing success indicators because you assume others are keeping score. Hiding struggles because you assume others will think less of you. Conforming to group preferences because you assume nonconformity will be heavily scrutinized. The truth is that most people are too busy managing their own lives and concerns to spend significant mental energy analyzing your choices. The attention you think you're receiving from others is often projection of the attention you're paying to yourself. The death of your imaginary audience. The concept of an imaginary audience was originally used to describe teenage behavior, but many adults continue to live as if they're being constantly observed and evaluated by a critical audience that exists primarily in their imagination. This imaginary audience includes composite critics, mental combinations of disapproving voices from your past and present. Hypothetical judges, imaginary people who might disapprove of your choices. Social media watchers, who are closely monitoring and evaluating your online presence. Professional observers, colleagues who you assume are tracking your career choices and performance. Parenting, evaluators, other parents who you imagine are comparing your parenting to theirs. The imaginary audience feels real because it's based on real experiences of judgment and criticism. But it's usually much harsher and more attentive than any actual audience in your life. Killing your imaginary audience doesn't mean becoming careless about genuine relationships or professional responsibilities. It means distinguishing between real feedback from real people and imaginary criticism from imaginary observers. Practical steps to authentic living. The values audit. List your top 5 values and evaluate whether your current choices reflect those values or others' expectations. The energy assessment. Track what energizes versus drains you for 2 weeks, then identify patterns that reveal your authentic preferences. The audience reality check. When you catch yourself making choices based on others' potential reactions, ask, who specifically will notice this? How will they actually be affected? Does their opinion matter for this decision? The conformity question. Before following social or professional expectations, ask, am I choosing this because it serves me or because it's what's expected? The authentic choice test. When facing decisions, imagine you had to live with the consequences, but nobody else would know about your choice. What would you decide? Research from Dr. Tim Kasser on materialism and well-being shows that people who make choices based on authentic values report higher life satisfaction, better relationships, and improved mental health compared to people who make choices based on external pressures or image management. The ripple effect of authentic living. When you start living authentically, the changes extend beyond your personal satisfaction. Permission giving. Your authenticity gives others implicit permission to be more authentic in their own lives. Relationships using improvement in materials. Relationships form when you stop performing and start showing up as yourself. Increased energy. Energy previously spent on performance and conformity becomes available for activities that actually matter to you. Better decision-making. Decisions become easier when they're based on your values rather than others' expectations. Reduced anxiety. Much of social anxiety stems from performance pressure. Authenticity reduces this pressure significantly. Enhance creativity. When you're not constraining yourself to others' expectations, you can explore ideas and solutions more freely. Exercise. Values clarification and authenticity audit. Part A. Values identification. 1. From this list, choose your top 5 values: family, career success, financial security, creativity, adventure, service to others, personal growth, health, independence, community, spirituality, knowledge, beauty, justice, fun. 2. For each chosen value, write one sentence about why it matters to you personally. 3. Identify which values might be inherited from family or culture versus chosen by you. Part B. Authenticity assessment. 1. List 3 recent decisions you made primarily to meet others' expectations. 2. List 3 recent decisions you made primarily based on your own values and preferences. 3. Notice the difference in how these 2 types of decisions felt to make and live with. 4. Ceramic art could or was a forceful, tangible nightclub. No such thing, Fellman. Let alone when... Chapter summary. Authentic living means making choices based on your values, preferences, and genuine priorities rather than others' expectations or societal shoulds. This requires courage to be disliked for the right reasons, wisdom to distinguish between helpful social norms and unnecessary conformity, and awareness that most people pay far less attention to your choices than you assume. The spotlight effect and imaginary audience create performance pressure that exhausts your energy and prevents genuine connections. When you live authentically, you not only improve your own life satisfaction and mental health, but you also give others permission to be more authentic in their own lives. The goal isn't to reject all social expectations, but to consciously choose which expectations serve you and which ones you'll release in favor of authentic choices that align with your actual values and circumstances. Chapter 6. The daily practice of not giving a damn. At 5:30 a.m., Marcus used to check his phone immediately upon waking, scrolling through emails, news, and social media before his feet hit the floor. By the time he'd showered and dressed, he'd already absorbed dozens of other people's priorities, problems, and opinions. His day began in reactive mode, responding to external demands rather than setting his own intentions. Now, Marcus leaves his phone charging in the kitchen overnight. His mornings begin with 10 minutes of coffee and quiet reflection, setting his priorities for the day based on his actual responsibilities and goals rather than the digital noise competing for his attention. This simple change transformed Marcus's entire day. When you start from a centered place rather than a reactive place, you're more likely to make choices aligned with your values rather than choices driven by anxiety, comparison, or people-pleasing. The daily practice of not giving a damn isn't about grand gestures or dramatic life changes. It's about small, consistent choices that protect your mental space and direct your energy toward what truly matters. Morning routines that prioritize your peace. How you begin your day sets the tone for everything that follows. Most people start their days in reactive mode, checking messages, consuming news, responding to others' agendas before clarifying their own priorities. Research from the University of Toronto, published in 2024, shows that people who begin their days with intentional practices report lower stress levels, better decision-making, and greater life satisfaction compared to those who start their days with digital consumption. An effective morning routine doesn't need to be elaborate or time-consuming. It needs to center you in your own life rather than everyone else's. The 5-minute foundation. 30 seconds of deep breathing upon waking. 2 minutes identifying your top 3 priorities for the day. 2.5 minutes of gratitude, reflection, or positive intention setting. The 15-minute structure. 5 minutes of movement, stretching, brief walk, light exercise. 5 minutes of mindful coffee/tea consumption without digital input. 5 minutes of day planning based on your priorities, not your inbox. The 30-minute investment. 10 minutes of journaling or reflection. 10 minutes of physical movement or exercise. 10 minutes of reading something inspiring or educational. The key isn't the specific activities, it's creating space between waking and reacting. This space allows you to remember who you are and what matters to you before the day's demands begin competing for your attention. A working mother from Calgary shared her transformation. I used to wake up and immediately start mental lists of everything I needed to do for everyone else. Now I spend 5 minutes drinking coffee and remembering that I'm a person with my own needs and preferences, not just a service provider for my family and employer. That shift in perspective changes how I handle everything that follows. The power pause technique for reactive moments. Throughout the day, situations will trigger your old patterns of caring too much about others' opinions, perfectionist standards, or comparative thinking. The power pause is a simple technique for interrupting these patterns before they hijack your emotional energy. When you notice yourself starting to worry about someone's opinion of your choices, perfectionist overthink a decision or task, compare yourself to others, feel responsible for others' reactions, seek approval for something that doesn't require it, use the power pause. 1. Stop, physically pause whatever you're doing. 2. Breathe. Take 3 conscious breaths. 3. Ask, is this thought/worry/concern serving me or depleting me? 4. Choose. Redirect your attention to something within your control and aligned with your priorities. The power pause interrupts automatic patterns and creates space for conscious choice. Research from Dr. Daniel Siegel shows that even brief mindfulness practices can activate the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive decision-making, while calming the amygdala, which triggers reactive responses. Mindfulness without the meditation BS. Many people resist mindfulness because they associate it with lengthy meditation sessions, spiritual beliefs, or complicated techniques. But mindfulness is simply paying attention to what's actually happening rather than getting lost in mental stories about what's happening. Practical mindfulness for busy people. Mindful transitions. Use transitions between activities as mindfulness cues. When you get in your car, take 3 conscious breaths. When you open your laptop, notice your posture and breathing. When you walk through doorways, briefly check in with your energy and intentions. Mindful consumption. Whether you're eating lunch, drinking coffee, or reading emails, occasionally bring full attention to the experience rather than multitasking or mentally planning ahead. Body check-ins. Several times throughout the day, briefly notice physical sensations without trying to change them. Where are you holding tension? How is your breathing? What does your energy feel like? Crazy thought observation. When you notice yourself caught in worry, comparison, or approval-seeking thoughts, simply observe them like clouds passing through the sky, rather than engaging with them as if they're urgent problems to solve. The goal isn't to empty your mind or achieve a particular state. The goal is awareness. Noticing when you're operating from anxiety, habit, or other people's priorities so you can consciously choose a different response. Digital boundaries and social media detox strategies. Digital technology is designed to capture and hold your attention. Social media platforms profit from keeping you engaged, often by triggering comparison, validation seeking, and fear of missing out. Creating digital boundaries is essential for mental peace in the modern world. Effective digital boundaries. Time boundaries. Specific times when you're unavailable for digital communication. First hour of morning, during meals, after 8 p.m. Platform boundaries. Conscious choices about which platforms you use and why. Professional networking demographics versus staying connected with friends. Content boundaries. Unfollowing accounts that trigger comparison, anxiety, or negative emotions, regardless of whether you should find them inspiring. Response boundaries. Not feeling obligated to respond immediately to messages that aren't urgent. Creation boundaries. Posting authentically rather than performatively. Sharing when you want to rather than feeling obligated to maintain an online presence. Recent research from the University of Pennsylvania shows that limiting social media use to 30 minutes per day for just 1 week significantly reduces depression and loneliness. The researchers concluded that social media use often substitutes for more meaningful activities and relationships. Practical social media detox steps. 1. Audit your follows. Unfollow accounts that make you feel inadequate, anxious, or compelled to compare yourself to others. 2. Turn off notifications. Let yourself check social media when you choose to, not when the platform decides to grab your attention. 3. Create phone-free zones. Meals, bedtime, first hour of morning, family time. 4. Replace scrolling. When you feel the urge to scroll, do something that actually improves your life. Text a friend, take a walk, read a book, organize a small space. 5. Post intentionally. Share things that reflect your authentic life rather than curated perfection. Evening practices for releasing the day. How you end your day affects both your sleep quality and your ability to start the next day centered rather than carrying forward stress and unresolved concerns. The daily release practice. Mental download. Spend 5 minutes writing down everything you're thinking about, tasks, worries, ideas, reminders. Getting thoughts out of your head and onto paper helps your brain relax. Gratitude without guilt. Identify 3 things that went well during the day, no matter how small. This isn't about forcing positivity, it's about training your attention to notice what's working rather than only what's problematic. Forgiveness and letting go. Acknowledge mistakes, disappointments, or conflicts from the day and consciously choose to learn from them rather than mentally replaying them. What would you do differently? What's outside your control? Tomorrow's intentions. Identify your top 3 priorities for tomorrow so your subconscious can process them overnight and you can wake up with direction rather than anxiety. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that people who practice evening reflection and planning report better sleep quality and reduced morning anxiety compared to those who go to bed while mentally processing the day's stress. Work-life integration versus the hustle culture trap. The concept of work-life balance suggests that work and life are opposing forces that must be carefully balanced. But for most people, work is part of life, not separate from it. The more helpful concept is work-life integration, making conscious choices about how work fits into your overall life priorities rather than letting work consume all available space. Hustle culture promotes the idea that constant productivity, side businesses, networking, and career advancement should be everyone's priorities. But hustle culture is fundamentally incompatible with not giving a damn about external validation, because it's built on the assumption that others' definitions of success should drive your choices. Work-life integration strategies. Define work hours. Even if you work from home or have flexible scheduling, having clear work hours helps prevent work from expanding to fill all available time. Transition rituals. Physical or mental practices that help you shift from work mode to personal mode, changing clothes, taking a walk, listening to music. Priority protection. Regularly evaluating whether your work commitments align with your life priorities and making adjustments when they don't. Energy management. Scheduling demanding work during your peak energy times and protecting low energy times for routine tasks. Boundary communication, being clear with colleagues and supervisors about your availability and working style rather than trying to meet everyone else's expectations. A software engineer from Toronto described his shift. I used to work until I was exhausted every day, thinking that was what successful people do. Then I realized that most of my extra hours were spent on perfectionist tweaking and trying to impress colleagues rather than producing better results. When I set clear work boundaries and focused on outcomes rather than hours, both my work quality and life satisfaction improved. The compound effect of daily practices. Small daily practices create significant changes over time because they build mental muscle. Each time you choose your priorities over external pressure, you strengthen your ability to make authentic choices. Create positive momentum. Starting the day centered makes it easier to maintain that centeredness throughout the day. Reduce decision fatigue. Having established routines and boundaries means fewer daily decisions about how to respond to common situations. Improve self-trust. Consistently following through on small commitments to yourself builds confidence in your ability to handle larger challenges. Create natural filters. When you're clear on your priorities and boundaries, it becomes easier to automatically filter out requests and opportunities that don't align with your values. Exercise. The ID-GAF Daily Toolkit. Create your personalized daily toolkit by choosing one practice from each category. Morning centering, choose one. 5 minutes of coffee/tea without digital input. 3 priorities identification. Gratitude or intention setting. Every physical movement. Midday reset, choose one. Power pause technique when triggered. Mindful transition between major activities. Body check-in. Conscious breathing during stress. Evening release, choose one. Mental download, writing. 3 gratitudes identification. Tomorrow's intention setting. Forgiveness and letting go practice. Weekly review, choose one. Assess whether your time aligned with your priorities. Evaluate boundary effectiveness. Notice patterns in energy and mood. Let's practices based on what's working. Start with just one practice from each category and maintain consistency for 2 weeks before adding additional elements. Chapter summary. Daily practices for not giving a damn are small, consistent choices that protect your mental space and direct your energy toward what truly matters. Effective morning routines center you in your own priorities rather than external demands, while the power pause technique interrupts reactive patterns throughout the day. Mindfulness doesn't require elaborate meditation, but simply paying attention to what's actually happening rather than mental stories about what's happening. Digital boundaries protect against the designed attention capture of social media and constant connectivity. Evening practices help release the day's stress and set positive intentions for tomorrow. Work-life integration focuses on conscious choices about how work fits into life priorities, rather than letting work consume all available space. These daily practices compound over time, building mental strength, reducing decision fatigue, and creating natural filters that automatically screen out what doesn't serve you. The goal isn't perfection, but consistency in small practices that maintain your authentic center. Chapter 7. Relationships after the damn detox. "You've changed," Sarah's sister announced during their monthly lunch, her tone mixing accusation with confusion. "You used to be so agreeable." Sarah smiled, recognizing the truth in the observation. She had changed. 6 months ago, she would have automatically offered to host Thanksgiving dinner when her sister complained about the work involved, even though Sarah's own family was going through a stressful period. This year, Sarah had simply said, "That sounds challenging," and continued eating her salad. "I'm still agreeable about things that matter," Sarah replied. "I'm just not agreeable about everything anymore." This conversation illustrates one of the most significant and sometimes uncomfortable aspects of learning to stop giving unnecessary damns. Your relationships will change. Some will deepen and improve. Others will become strained or naturally fade. All will become more authentic. How authentic relationships form when you stop performing. When you've been a people pleaser, perfectionist, or approval seeker, many of your relationships are based on the performance version of yourself rather than your authentic self. You've been so focused on being likable that people don't actually know who you are underneath the performance. As you begin showing up more authentically, expressing your actual opinions, setting boundaries, making choices based on your values rather than others' expectations, something remarkable happens. You discover who genuinely likes and accepts the real you versus who is only comfortable with the performing you. Authentic relationships have different characteristics than performance-based relationships. Performance-based relationships. Conditional acceptance based on meeting expectations. Conversations focused on external achievements and appearances. Mutual performance and image management. Anxiety about disappointing or being judged. Exhaustion from maintaining the relationship. Surface-level connection despite years of interaction. Authentic relationships. Acceptance that includes your flaws and limitations. Conversations that include struggles, growth, and genuine emotions. Mutual vulnerability and realness. Comfort with disagreement and different perspectives. Energy and joy from spending time together. Deep connection that develops relatively quickly. Research from Dr. John Gottman's relationship studies shows that relationships built on authenticity and acceptance are significantly more stable and satisfying than relationships built on performance and approval seeking. The data reveals that couples who can express disagreement, set boundaries, and maintain individual identities have lower divorce rates and higher reported satisfaction. A working father from Vancouver described his experience. When I stopped trying to be the perfect friend who always said yes to everything, I lost touch with several people from my social circle. At first, this felt like failure, but the friends who remained became much closer. We started having real conversations about challenges and goals, instead of just talking about work and weather. I realized I'd been maintaining 20 acquaintanceships instead of building 5 friendships. Dealing with people who resist your changes. Not everyone will appreciate your newfound authenticity and boundaries. Some people benefited from your people-pleasing patterns and may resist changes that require them to adjust their expectations or find alternative solutions to problems you used to solve for them. Common resistance patterns include the guilt trip. You're being selfish, or you never used to be this way. The manipulation. If you really cared about me, you would. The comparison. Other people would help me with this. The minimization. It's not that big of a deal when you set boundaries. The emotional pressure. Tears, anger, or dramatic reactions to your reasonable requests. The history reminder. After everything I've done for you, these resistance patterns often work because they trigger your old fears about being disliked, disappointing others, or being seen as selfish. But resistance to your healthy changes is actually information about the relationship dynamic. Effective responses to resistance. For guilt trips, I understand you're disappointed. This is what works for me right now. For manipulation, I care about you, which is why I'm being honest about my limitations. For comparisons, other people may make different choices. This is my choice. For minimization, it may not seem big to you, but it matters to me. For emotional pressure, stay calm and repeat your boundary without engaging with the drama. For history reminders, I appreciate what you've done. That doesn't change my current availability. The goal isn't to convince people that your changes are reasonable. It's to maintain your changes regardless of their reactions. People who genuinely care about you will eventually adjust to your new boundaries. People who only valued your compliance may choose to distance themselves, which provides valuable information about the relationship's foundation. The natural pruning of superficial connections. When you stop performing for approval, some relationships naturally fade. This isn't necessarily dramatic or conflict-filled. It's often just a gradual reduction in contact as you discover you don't have much authentic connection beyond shared performance patterns. Relationships that commonly fade during authenticity transitions. Transactional friendships, relationships based primarily on mutual favors, complaints, or convenience rather than genuine affection and shared interests. Status connections. Relationships maintained for social positioning, professional networking, or image management, rather than authentic enjoyment of each other's company. Obligation. Relationships, connections you maintain because you feel you should, rather than because you want to. Drama bonds, relationships centered around shared complaints, gossip, or crisis management rather than positive shared experiences. Competition connections, friendships that involve constant comparison, one-upmanship, or subtle rivalry. This pruning process can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're accustomed to measuring social success by quantity of connections rather than quality of relationships. But research consistently shows that having fewer, deeper relationships contributes more to happiness and life satisfaction than having many superficial connections. Dr. Robin Dunbar's research on social connections suggests that humans can maintain approximately 5 intimate bonds, 15 close friendships, 50 meaningful connections, and 150 total social relationships. When you stop spending energy maintaining relationships that don't serve you, you have more energy available for relationships that do, building deeper connections through vulnerability, not compliance. Authentic relationships are built on mutual vulnerability, the willingness to be seen, known, and accepted, including your imperfections and limitations. This is different from compliance-based relationships, which are built on mutual performance and approval-seeking. Vulnerability in relationships means sharing struggles instead of only sharing successes, admitting mistakes instead of maintaining a perfect image, expressing needs instead of always being the one who gives, setting boundaries instead of always accommodating others, showing emotions instead of always being the helper. CB, asking for help. Vulnerability requires discernment. You don't share everything with everyone. But in relationships that matter to you, appropriate vulnerability creates intimacy and trust that performance-based interactions cannot achieve. Research from Dr. Brené Brown shows that vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. Her studies demonstrate that people who are willing to be vulnerable in relationships report higher levels of life satisfaction and stronger social connections. Examples of healthy vulnerability. Instead of, "Everything's great, how are you?" try, "I've been struggling with work stress lately. How are you handling things?" Instead of, "Sure, I can help you move this weekend," when you're already overwhelmed. Try, "I'm not available this weekend, but I hope your move goes well. Let me know if you need help settling in next week." Instead of, "That restaurant was fine," when you didn't enjoy it, try, "That wasn't really my style of food, but I enjoyed spending time with you. Where would you like to go next time?" Difficult conversations made easy when you stop caring about being liked. One of the greatest gifts of not giving a damn about universal approval is that difficult conversations become significantly easier. When you're not invested in being liked by everyone, you can focus on being honest and helpful rather than likable and agreeable. Common difficult conversations include setting boundaries. "I'm not available to help with that." Expressing disagreement. "I see that situation differently." Addressing relationship issues. "This pattern isn't working for me." Declining invitations. "That doesn't work for me." Giving honest feedback. "I noticed X and I'm concerned about Y." Ending relationships. "I think we want different things from this friendship." The framework for difficult conversations. 1. Get clear on your intention. What outcome do you want? Usually understanding, not agreement. 2. Take responsibility for your part. Own your feelings and perspectives without blaming the other person. 3. Be specific and factual. Focus on behaviors and impacts rather than character judgments. 4. Listen to understand. Be genuinely curious about their perspective. 5. Accept that you can't control their response. You can only control your honesty and kindness. Research from Harvard Negotiation Project shows that people who approach difficult conversations with genuine curiosity and clear boundaries achieve better outcomes than people who approach them with the goal of being liked or avoiding conflict. Manager from Calgary shared her transformation. "I used to avoid giving constructive feedback to my team because I wanted to be the nice manager, but my avoidance was actually hurting their professional development and our team's performance. When I started focusing on being helpful rather than likable, my feedback conversations became more productive, and my team members appreciated the clarity handling family dynamics and generational patterns. Family relationships present unique challenges because they often involve decades of established patterns, strong emotions, and complex loyalties. When you begin setting boundaries and living authentically, family members may resist more strongly than friends or colleagues because they have longer histories with the performing version of you. Common family resistance patterns. Role enforcement. You've always been the responsible one when you try to set boundaries. Tradition. Pressure. We've always done it this way when you suggest changes. Guilt and obligation. Family comes first when you prioritize your well-being. Identity. Resistance. That's not like you. When you express authentic preferences. Historical leverage, using childhood dynamics or past events to maintain current patterns. Strategies for navigating family changes. Start small. Begin with minor boundary changes rather than major confrontations. Stay consistent. Maintain your boundaries even when family members test them. Avoid over-explaining. Family members often feel entitled to detailed justifications for your choices. Expect regression. Family systems often resist change and may increase pressure when you first set boundaries. Find allies. Identify family members who support your growth and authenticity. Consider professional help. Family therapy can provide neutral space for navigating major changes. The goal isn't to change your family members or gain their approval for your changes. The goal is to interact with them authentically while maintaining your own well-being and values. The compound benefits of authentic relationships. When you transition from performance-based to authentic relationships, the benefits compound over time. Increased energy. You no longer exhaust yourself maintaining a false persona in relationships. Deeper intimacy. Authentic connections provide the sense of belonging that humans crave. Better support. People who know the real you can offer relevant help and encouragement. Reduced anxiety. You don't worry constantly about disappointing people or maintaining your image. Improved self-esteem. Being accepted for who you are builds genuine confidence. Enhanced problem-solving. Authentic relationships provide honest feedback and different perspectives. Greater resilience. Strong, authentic relationships provide emotional support during challenges. Exercise. Relationship audit and communication scripts. Part A. Relationship audit. List your significant relationships and categorize them. 1. Authentic and supportive. Relationships where you can be yourself and feel accepted. 2. Performance-based but valuable. Relationships worth transitioning toward authenticity. 3. Superficial but pleasant. Relationships that are fine as they are, but don't need deep investment. 4. Draining or toxic. Relationships that consistently deplete your energy or require excessive performance. Part B. Communication scripts for relationships. In Category 2, develop scripts for common scenarios. Boundary setting. I'm not available for specific request, but I hope it works out well. Authentic sharing. I've been thinking about topic and realized your genuine perspective. Declining invitations. Activity doesn't really work for me, but I'd love to. Special explanation. It would be helpful if we could. Specific request. Is that something you'd be willing to try? Practice these scripts until they feel natural and aligned with your authentic voice. Chapter summary. Authentic relationships require showing up as your real self rather than performing for approval, which means some relationships will deepen while others naturally fade. People may resist your changes, especially if they benefited from your people-pleasing patterns, but their resistance provides valuable information about the relationship's foundation. Superficial connections often naturally prune away when you stop maintaining them through performance, freeing energy for deeper, more meaningful relationships. Authentic relationships are built through appropriate vulnerability rather than compliance, and difficult conversations become easier when you focus on being honest and helpful rather than universally liked. Family relationships may require special patience and strategy because of established patterns and complex emotions. The compound benefits of authentic relationships include increased energy, deeper intimacy, better support, reduced anxiety, improved self-esteem, and greater resilience. The goal isn't to have more relationships, but to have relationships where you can be genuinely known and accepted. Chapter 8. Advanced Liberation, Handling Life's Big Challenges. When David's company announced layoffs, his first instinct was familiar: panic about what people would think. Would his neighbors judge his financial situation? Would former colleagues see him as unsuccessful? Would his extended family question his career choices? Then he caught himself mid-spiral and realized something profound. None of those opinions would help him find a new job or navigate this transition successfully. For the first time in a major life crisis, David focused entirely on practical next steps rather than reputation management. He updated his resume honestly, reached out to his professional network authentically, and told friends and family simply, "I'm job searching after layoffs at my company." The energy he would have spent on image control went instead toward productive job search activities. 6 weeks later, David had 2 job offers. More importantly, he had navigated a significant life challenge without losing himself in other people's potential opinions. Major life transitions, job changes, relationship endings, health crises, financial setbacks, family conflicts, geographic moves. Test your ability to maintain authentic priorities when external pressures intensify. These situations often trigger old patterns of caring too much about others' opinions or trying to control outcomes beyond your influence. Dealing with major life transitions without people-pleasing. Life transitions are inherently uncertain and often involve loss of familiar identities, routines, or relationships. During these vulnerable periods, the temptation to seek approval and avoid judgment intensifies because external validation can feel like stability when everything else feels uncertain. Common people-pleasing patterns during transitions. Over-explaining your choices to justify major life decisions to others. Seeking excessive input from people whose opinions don't significantly impact your situation. Making decisions based on how they'll look rather than what will actually work for you. Avoiding necessary changes because you worry about others' reactions. Performing confidence when you actually need to acknowledge uncertainty and ask for help. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that people who maintain authentic decision-making during major transitions report better mental health outcomes and greater satisfaction with their choices compared to those who make transition decisions based primarily on external expectations. Effective transition strategies. Identify your core concerns. What aspects of this transition actually matter for your well-being, relationships, and practical needs, versus what matters for your image. Distinguish helpful input from noise. Whose opinions and advice are relevant because of their expertise, experience, or relationship to you, versus whose opinions are just general commentary. Focus on process over outcomes. You can control your actions during transitions, but not all outcomes. Direct energy toward taking appropriate steps rather than managing others' perceptions of your situation. Practice transparent communication. Share what you're comfortable sharing without over-explaining or performing confidence you don't feel. A teacher from Toronto described her career transition. When I decided to leave teaching after 15 years to start a consulting business, I initially spent enormous energy trying to convince everyone that I wasn't crazy and that my business would definitely succeed. That energy could have been better spent on business planning and skill development. When I focused on taking practical next steps instead of managing others' opinions about my choice, both my confidence and my business improved. The gift of failure and disappointment. One of the most liberating aspects of not giving a damn about universal approval is that failure becomes information rather than catastrophe. When you're not invested in maintaining a perfect image, you can acknowledge mistakes, learn from disappointments, and adjust course without the additional burden of reputation management. Reframing failure and disappointment. From "I failed so people will think I'm incompetent" to "This didn't work, so now I have information about what to try differently." From "I disappointed them, so they'll never trust me again," to "I disappointed them, so I need to learn from this and make different choices going forward." From "This setback ruins my reputation," to "This setback is temporary and doesn't define my overall competence or worth." Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset demonstrates that people who view failures as learning opportunities rather than identity threats recover faster from setbacks and achieve better long-term outcomes. Her studies show that this mindset shift improves performance in academic, professional, and personal contexts. The practical benefits of accepting failure. Faster recovery. When you're not spending energy on damage control or reputation repair, you can focus on actual problem solving. Better decision-making. Future decisions improve because they're based on accurate information about what works rather than what looks good. Increased risk tolerance. Appropriate risk-taking becomes possible when failure isn't catastrophic to your self-concept. Enhanced learning. Mistakes become valuable data instead of sources of shame. Improve relationships. People generally trust and respect those who can acknowledge mistakes and learn from them. Mortality as the ultimate perspective shift. Nothing clarifies priorities like confronting mortality, your own or someone you love, whether through health scares, aging parents, or the death of peers. Encounters with mortality strip away most concerns about others' opinions and social expectations. The question, "What would I do if I had 6 months to live?" isn't morbid, it's clarifying. Most people's answers don't include worrying about what acquaintances think of their choices, maintaining perfect social media presence, or avoiding disappointing people who don't significantly impact their lives. Research from Dr. Atul Gawande on end-of-life decision-making shows that people facing mortality consistently prioritize authentic relationships, meaningful activities, and personal values over social expectations and image management. This shift often brings profound relief and life satisfaction, even in difficult circumstances. Mortality-informed perspective shifts. Time is a finite resource. When you truly accept that your time is limited, you become more selective about how you spend it. Relationship priority clarification. Mortality highlights which relationships truly matter versus which ones you maintain out of habit or obligation. Values. Authenticity. Facing mortality often reveals the difference between values you actually hold and values you think you should hold. Legacy focus. Instead of daily approval seeking, attention shifts to the impact and contributions you want to leave behind. Present moment awareness. Mortality awareness often increases appreciation for current experiences rather than constant focus on future outcomes. A business owner from Vancouver shared his experience after his father's sudden death. "I spent the week after the funeral looking at my calendar and email inbox differently. So much of what had seemed urgent and important revealed itself as trivial busy work designed to make me feel productive rather than actually accomplish anything meaningful. I started asking myself, if my father could see how I'm spending this time, would he think it's worthwhile?" That question changed how I structure my entire life. Career pivots and financial fears. Career changes often trigger intense caring about others' opinions because professional identity is closely tied to social status and financial security. When you're considering a career pivot, the voices of doubt, both internal and external, tend to focus on what others will think rather than what will actually work for your life. Common fears during career transitions. Status anxiety. Worry about moving to a lesser position or industry by others' standards. Financial judgment. Concern about others' opinions of salary changes or lifestyle adjustments. Competence questions. Fear that career changes signal inability to succeed in your current field. Age appropriateness. Worry about being too old or too young to make certain career moves. Family expectations. Pressure to maintain career paths that meet family members' definitions of success. Reframing career transition fears. Status. Define success by your own values and life priorities rather than external markers. Financial. Make financial decisions based on your actual needs and goals rather than others' expectations. Competence. Career changes often signal growth and adaptability rather than failure. Age. People successfully transition careers at all life stages. Timing is less important than alignment with your circumstances. Family. Your career serves your life, not others' expectations or definitions of success. Research from Harvard Business School shows that people who make career transitions based on intrinsic motivations, alignment with values, interests, and lifestyle preferences report higher job satisfaction and better work performance than those who make transitions based on extrinsic motivations, salary, status, others' expectations. Practical career transition strategies. Values. Clarification. Identify what you actually want from work. Creativity, stability, flexibility, impact, income, etc., rather than what you think you should want. Financial reality check. Calculate your actual financial needs rather than assuming you need to maintain or increase current lifestyle expenses. Network authentically. Reach out to your professional network honestly about your transition rather than trying to appear completely confident about uncertain changes. Experiment when possible. Test new career directions through volunteering, part-time work, or consulting before making major commitments. Be separate identity from job title. Remember that your job is something you do, not something you are. Managing criticism from people you love. The most challenging aspect of advanced liberation is learning to maintain your authentic choices when people you care about disapprove of them. It's one thing to dismiss strangers' opinions. It's much harder when your spouse, parents, children, or close friends question your decisions. Common criticism from loved ones. Lifestyle choices. You're working too much, or you're not ambitious enough. Parenting decisions. You're too strict, or you're too permissive. Financial priorities. You should save more, or you should enjoy your money. Social choices. You're becoming antisocial when you set social boundaries. Personal growth. You're changing too much when you develop authentic preferences. Life pace. You need to slow down or you need to do more with your life. Strategies for handling loved ones' criticism. Listen for the underlying concern. Often criticism contains genuine care expressed poorly. Try to understand what they're worried about rather than defending against the criticism itself. Acknowledge their perspective. I understand you're concerned about X, without agreeing or disagreeing with their assessment. Share your reasoning when appropriate. If the relationship can handle it, explain your thinking without over-justifying your choices. Set boundaries around advice. I appreciate that you care. I'm not looking for advice about this topic right now. Maintain the relationship without changing your choices. Love people without letting their concerns override your judgment about your own life. Accept that they may stay concerned. You can't manage others' emotions about your choices, even when you love them. Remember that people who love you want you to be happy and successful by their definitions of happiness and success. When your definitions differ from theirs, conflict is natural. The goal isn't to eliminate their concerns, but to maintain your choices while preserving the relationship when possible. The courage to disappoint while living your values. Perhaps the ultimate test of liberation from excessive caring is the willingness to disappoint people you love when living your values requires it. This doesn't mean being intentionally hurtful or dismissive of others' feelings. It means being willing to accept others' disappointment as the cost of authentic living. Examples of value-based disappointing. Career. Choosing meaningful work that pays less over high-paying work that feels meaningless. Family. Setting boundaries with family members whose behavior is harmful to your well-being. Social. Declining invitations to events that don't align with your values or energy. Parenting. Making parenting choices based on your family's needs rather than community expectations. Lifestyle. Living below your means to prioritize experiences over possessions. Time. Protecting time for rest, reflection, or solitude even when others want your availability. The framework for value-based disappointing. 1. Get clear on your values. What principles guide your decisions when external pressure is removed? 2. Accept the emotional cost. Disappointing people you care about will feel uncomfortable. 3. Communicate with kindness. Explain your choices when appropriate without over-justifying them. 4. Stay connected when possible. Maintain relationships even when you disappoint people's specific expectations. 5. Trust the long-term outcome. Values-based decisions usually improve relationships and life satisfaction over time, even when they initially cause disappointment. Research from Dr. Tim Kasser shows that people who make life choices based on intrinsic values, personal growth, relationships, community, contribution, rather than extrinsic values, wealth, fame, image, report higher levels of well-being and life satisfaction, even when their choices initially disappoint others. The long-term payoff of short-term discomfort. Advanced liberation requires tolerating short-term discomfort, others' disappointment, uncertainty about outcomes, social awkwardness, in service of long-term alignment between your choices and your authentic values and priorities. This tolerance develops over time through repeated experiences of discovering that people adjust to your boundaries more easily than you expect. Disappointing others rarely damages relationships as much as you fear. Authentic choices usually improve life satisfaction, even when they initially feel risky. The energy saved from not managing others' opinions becomes available for meaningful activities. People generally respect authenticity more than they respect people-pleasing. Exercise, the worst-case scenario diffuser. When facing a major life challenge or decision, use this exercise to separate realistic concerns from catastrophic thinking. 1. Identify the decision or challenge. What situation are you navigating? 2. List your concerns. What are you worried about regarding this situation? 3. Separate realistic from catastrophic. Which concerns are based on likely outcomes versus worst-case scenarios? 4. Focus on your control. What aspects of this situation can you influence through your actions? 5. Plan for realistic challenges. What practical steps can you take to address likely difficulties? 6. Accept what you can't control. What outcomes are outside your influence and need to be accepted rather than managed? 7. Values check. If this situation forced you to choose between others' approval and your own values, what would your values-based choice be? Chapter summary. Life's major challenges, transitions, failures, health issues, career changes, relationship conflicts test your ability to maintain authentic priorities when external pressures intensify. During these vulnerable periods, the temptation to seek approval and avoid judgment increases, but focusing on reputation management rather than practical problem-solving actually makes challenges harder to navigate successfully. Failure becomes information rather than catastrophe when you're not invested in maintaining a perfect image. Mortality awareness provides ultimate perspective, clarifying which concerns truly matter versus which ones are social performance. Career pivots trigger fears about others' judgments, but decisions based on intrinsic values lead to better outcomes than those based on external expectations. Managing criticism from loved ones requires distinguishing between underlying care and poor expression while maintaining your choices without damaging important relationships. The courage to disappoint people while living your values is the ultimate test of liberation, requiring tolerance for short-term discomfort in service of long-term authenticity. Advanced liberation means navigating life's biggest challenges with your energy focused on practical solutions and authentic choices rather than reputation management and approval seeking. Chapter 9. Maintaining Your Freedom, Backsliding and Recovery. 3 months into her new boundary-setting life, Jennifer found herself saying yes to organizing her neighborhood's annual block party, a task that would consume dozens of hours she didn't have during her busiest work season. As she hung up the phone, she felt the familiar weight of overcommitment settling on her shoulders. How did I end up here again? She wondered. The answer was simple. Maintaining freedom from excessive caring isn't a destination you reach once and stay at forever. It's an ongoing practice that requires vigilance, self-compassion, and recovery strategies for when old patterns resurface. Jennifer's backsliding wasn't failure. It was information. She had been stressed about a project deadline, feeling disconnected from her community, and experiencing some loneliness. In that vulnerable moment, her old pattern of saying yes to gain connection and approval had temporarily overridden her newer boundary-setting skills. The key to long-term success isn't avoiding backsliding entirely. It's recognizing it quickly, understanding what triggered it, and having reliable recovery strategies. Why regression is normal and temporary. Your brain has spent years, possibly decades, operating with people-pleasing, perfectionist, and approval-seeking patterns. These neural pathways don't disappear overnight. They remain available and can be reactivated during times of stress, transition, loneliness, or vulnerability. Neuroscience research shows that behavior change involves building new neural pathways rather than erasing old ones. The old pathways remain dormant but accessible, which is why familiar patterns can resurface during challenging periods. Common triggers for backsliding: stress and overwhelm. When your mental resources are depleted, you may revert to familiar coping strategies even when they don't serve you. Social isolation, loneliness can trigger approval-seeking behaviors as attempts to create connection. Life transitions, major changes often activate old patterns as your brain seeks familiar responses to uncertainty. Criticism or rejection, even small incidents of disapproval, can temporarily reactivate people-pleasing patterns. Success and visibility. Ironically, positive attention can trigger perfectionist and image management behaviors. Family interactions. Spending time with family members often reactivates childhood patterns of seeking approval or avoiding conflict. Comparison triggers. Social media, reunions, or professional events can temporarily reactivate competitive and comparison patterns. Understanding these triggers helps normalize the experience of temporary regression. Dr. James Prochaska's research on behavior change shows that most people cycle through periods of progress and regression multiple times before achieving lasting change. Spotting the early warning signs of old patterns. The sooner you recognize backsliding, the easier it is to course correct. Early warning signs are usually physical, emotional, or behavioral signals that occur before you're consciously aware that old patterns have reactivated. Physical warning signs. Tension in jaw, shoulders, or stomach when thinking about social or professional situations. Sleep disruption from worrying about others' opinions or reactions. Fatigue that doesn't correspond to actual activity levels. Changes in appetite related to stress about performance or approval. Emotional warning signs. Anxiety about disappointing people or being judged. Resentment about commitments you've made. Feeling like you're performing rather than being authentic. Increased sensitivity to others' moods or potential criticism. Behavioral warning signs. Over-explaining your choices or decisions. Saying yes to requests that don't align with your priorities. Spending excessive time on appearance or image management. Checking social media for validation or approval. Avoiding difficult conversations or boundary-setting opportunities. Working longer hours to prove your commitment rather than achieve necessary outcomes. Mental warning signs. Ruminating about others' potential reactions to your choices. Comparing your life, appearance, or achievements to others. Second-guessing decisions you felt confident about previously. Mental rehearsing of conversations or scenarios focused on gaining approval. A software engineer from Calgary described her early warning system. I realized that when I start checking LinkedIn obsessively and mentally comparing my career progress to former colleagues, it's a sign that I'm sliding back into competitive thinking. That's my cue to step back and refocus on my own goals and values rather than getting caught up in what everyone else is doing. Quick recovery techniques for difficult moments. When you notice old patterns reactivating, quick intervention can prevent temporary backsliding from becoming long-term regression. These techniques work best when practiced regularly during stable periods, so they're readily available during challenging moments. The Values Anchor Technique. 1. Identify your top 3 values, e.g., family, creativity, authenticity would have been e.g. 2. Ask, which choice honors these values regardless of others' reactions? 3. Make the values-based choice even if it feels uncomfortable. The future self check-in. 1. Imagine yourself 1 year from now looking back at this decision. 2. Ask, what would my future self want me to choose? 3. Usually the answer is the authentic choice rather than the approval-seeking choice. The energy audit. 1. Notice where your mental and emotional energy is going right now. 2. Ask, is this energy expenditure serving my actual priorities? 3. Redirect energy toward concerns within your control that align with your values. The boundary reset. 1. Identify what boundary you've allowed to slip. 2. Recommit to that boundary without judging yourself for the temporary lapse. 3. Communicate the boundary clearly in the next relevant interaction. The authenticity check. 1. Ask, am I making this choice because it's right for me or because I want to avoid someone's disapproval? 2. If it's approval-seeking, pause and consider what choice you'd make if approval weren't a factor. 3. Make the authentic choice even if it initially feels scarier. The Power Pause Plus. 1. Stop what you're doing and take 3 conscious breaths. 2. Ask, what does my wisest self know about this situation? 3. Act from that wisdom rather than from anxiety or old patterns. Research from Dr. Kristen Neff shows that self-compassion during setbacks significantly improves recovery speed and long-term behavior change success. People who treat themselves with kindness during regression are more likely to return to healthy patterns than those who use self-criticism. Building long-term resilience. Sustainable freedom from excessive caring requires building resilience, the ability to maintain your authentic choices even during difficult periods. Resilience develops through consistent practice and supportive systems rather than willpower alone. Resilience building strategies. Regular values review. Monthly check-ins with yourself about whether your choices align with your stated values. When alignment drifts, course correct without self-judgment. Boundary maintenance practice. Like physical exercise, boundary-setting skills need regular use to stay strong. Practice saying no to small requests to maintain your ability to set boundaries around big ones. Authentic relationship investment. Prioritize time and energy for relationships where you can be genuine rather than performing. These relationships provide support and perspective during challenging periods. Stress management systems. Develop reliable ways to manage stress that don't involve reverting to people-pleasing or approval-seeking patterns. This might include exercise, creative activities, nature time, or meditation. Professional support. Consider working with a therapist or coach who understands the challenges of changing people-pleasing patterns. Professional support can provide objective perspective and additional tools. Learning and growth mindset. View backsliding as information about triggers and vulnerabilities rather than evidence of failure. Each regression provides data about what support systems or skills you need to develop. Finding your tribe of authentic people. One of the most powerful supports for maintaining your freedom is surrounding yourself with people who value authenticity over performance. These relationships provide both modeling and encouragement for living genuinely. Characteristics of authenticity supporting people. They share struggles and challenges honestly rather than maintaining perfect facades. They respect your boundaries without making you feel guilty for having them. They celebrate your authentic choices, even when those choices differ from what they would choose. They can disagree with you without trying to change your mind or withdrawing their friendship. They show up consistently rather than only when they need something from you. They express their own needs and boundaries clearly rather than expecting you to guess. They support your growth even when it means you become less available to meet their needs. Where to find authentic people? Values-based communities, groups organized around shared interests, causes, or activities rather than social status or networking. Support groups, whether professional, personal, or hobby-secret, these environments often foster genuine connection. Volunteer organizations, people who donate their time often prioritize meaning over image. Learning environments, classes, workshops, or discussion groups where people are exploring and growing. Professional development, colleagues who prioritize competence and collaboration over competition and politics. Spiritual or philosophical communities, groups focused on deeper questions and personal development. Recreational activities, hobby groups, sports teams, or creative pursuits where people engage for enjoyment rather than advancement. The goal isn't to eliminate all relationships with performance-oriented people, but to ensure you have enough authentic relationships to provide support and perspective when maintaining your freedom becomes challenging. The ongoing practice of selective caring. Maintaining your freedom requires accepting that learning to care selectively is a lifelong practice rather than a problem you solve once. Like physical fitness, the skills require ongoing attention and adjustment as your life circumstances change. Elements of ongoing practice. Regular priority assessment. Life circumstances change, and so should your caring priorities. What deserved significant attention 5 years ago might not warrant the same investment now. Seasonal adjustments. Different life seasons require different boundary configurations. New parenthood, career transitions, aging parents, and health changes all affect what you can reasonably care about. Relationship evolution. As relationships develop or change, your caring investments may need adjustment. Some relationships will deepen and warrant more emotional energy. Others may naturally require less. Values refinement. Your core values may evolve with experience and maturity. Regularly reassessing what truly matters to you helps maintain authentic caring distribution. Upside, obsidian. Energy management. Your capacity for caring changes with stress levels, health status, and life demands. Adjusting your caring commitments based on your current capacity prevents overwhelm and resentment. A working mother from Toronto described her evolving practice. I used to think that once I learned to set boundaries, I'd have it figured out forever. But I've realized it's more like learning to drive. You master the basic skills once, but you need to stay alert and keep making adjustments based on traffic conditions. My traffic conditions include my kids' changing needs, my parents aging, career demands shifting, and my own energy levels varying. The skill isn't becoming perfect at boundaries, it's getting better at making conscious choices about where my energy goes. Creating positive change without trying to fix anyone. One of the subtlest forms of excessive caring is the urge to help others learn the same lessons you've learned. When you experience the relief and freedom of not giving unnecessary damns, it's natural to want to share that gift with people you care about who seem stuck in their own patterns of people-pleasing, perfectionism, or approval-seeking. But trying to fix or change others is itself a form of excessive caring that can undermine your own freedom and damage relationships. Why trying to fix others doesn't work. People change on their own timeline. Readiness for change is internal and can't be imposed from outside, no matter how obviously beneficial the change would be. Advice resistance. Unsolicited advice often creates resistance rather than openness, even when the advice is excellent. Relationship damage. When you approach relationships with a fixing agenda, people feel judged and managed rather than accepted and supported. Energy misdirection. Focusing on changing others directs energy away from your own continued growth and authentic living. Control illusion. Believing you can fix others maintains the illusion that you can control outcomes beyond your actual influence. The alternative approach is modeling rather than preaching. Live your values. Demonstrate the benefits of authentic living through your own choices, rather than explaining them to others. Share when asked. Offer insights and experiences when people specifically request them, rather than providing unsolicited guidance. Support without fixing. Listen to others' struggles with empathy without feeling responsible for solving their problems. Maintain your boundaries. Don't compromise your own well-being trying to help others who aren't ready to help themselves. Accept others' choices. Allow people to make their own mistakes and learn their own lessons without rescuing or lecturing them. Research from motivational interviewing shows that people are more likely to change when they feel accepted and supported rather than judged and pressured. Your authentic living provides an example that others can choose to follow or not, but the choice must be theirs. The compound effect of small acts of authenticity. The most sustainable approach to maintaining freedom is through small, consistent acts of authenticity rather than dramatic gestures or major life overhauls. These small acts compound over time, creating significant changes without the resistance that often accompanies sudden major changes. Examples of small, authentic acts. Daily choices. Wearing clothes that feel comfortable rather than impressive. Choosing activities based on your energy rather than others' expectations. Social interactions, sharing honest responses to "how are you" rather than automatic "fine" responses, expressing genuine opinions in low-stakes conversations. Work behavior, taking breaks when you need them rather than when it looks dedicated. Focusing on results rather than appearing busy. Family dynamics, expressing your actual preferences about holiday plans. Declining requests that don't work for you without elaborate justifications. Social media, posting authentic content rather than curated perfection, unfollowing accounts that trigger comparison. Consumer choices, buying things you actually want or need rather than things that project an image. Time management, saying no to requests that don't align with your priorities. Scheduling time for activities that restore your energy. These small acts might seem insignificant individually, but they create a compound effect that strengthens your authenticity muscle and makes larger authentic choices feel more natural over time. Monthly freedom check-in and maintenance plan. Sustainable change requires regular assessment and course correction. A monthly check-in provides structure for maintaining your progress without becoming obsessive about self-monitoring. Monthly assessment questions. Energy allocation. Where is most of my mental and emotional energy going? Does this allocation align with my stated priorities? Boundary effectiveness. Which boundaries am I maintaining successfully? Which ones need reinforcement? Relationship quality. Which relationships are energizing me? Which ones are consistently draining my resources? Authenticity level. In how many areas of my life am I showing up as my genuine self versus performing for others? Values alignment. Are my major choices reflecting my core values or others' expectations? Stress sources. What's causing me the most stress? How much of this stress is about things within my control? Growth areas. What old patterns am I noticing? What skills do I need to develop further? Celebration. What authentic choices am I proud of this month? How can I acknowledge this progress? Based on your monthly assessment, create specific action items for the following month. These might include reinforcing specific boundaries that have become loose, scheduling time for relationships that energize you, identifying areas where you want to be more authentic, planning stress management strategies for anticipated challenges, seeking additional support or resources if needed. Exercise, monthly freedom check-in and maintenance plan. Set a monthly recurring reminder to complete this assessment. Part A, current state assessment. Rate yourself on a scale of 1-10 in each area. Boundary maintenance, authentic self-expression, energy allocation aligned with priorities, resistance to approval seeking, comfort with others' disappointment. Focus on things within your control. Part B, pattern recognition. 1. What situations consistently trigger old patterns? 2. What early warning signs did you notice this month? 3. Which recovery techniques work best for you? 4. What support systems were most helpful? Part C, next month's intentions. 1. Choose one area for focused improvement. 2. Identify specific actions you'll take. 3. Anticipate likely challenges and plan responses. 4. Schedule time for practices that support your authenticity. Part D, Gratitude and Progress. 1. Acknowledge 3 authentic choices you made this month. 2. Notice improvements in your relationships, work, or well-being. 3. Appreciate your commitment to this ongoing practice. Chapter Summary. Maintaining freedom from excessive caring is an ongoing practice rather than a permanent achievement. Regression to old patterns is normal and temporary, usually triggered by stress, transitions, isolation, criticism, or family interactions. Early warning signs include physical tension, emotional anxiety, behavioral people-pleasing, and mental rumination about others' opinions. Quick recovery techniques include values anchoring, future self check-ins, energy audits, boundary resets, and authenticity checks. Long-term resilience requires regular values review, boundary practice, authentic relationships, stress management, and professional support when needed. Finding your tribe of authentic people provides crucial support and modeling for genuine living. The ongoing practice involves regular priority assessments, seasonal adjustments, relationship evolution, values refinement, and energy management. Trying to fix others undermines your own freedom. Modeling authenticity is more effective than preaching change. Small daily acts of authenticity compound over time to create significant transformation without resistance. Monthly check-ins provide structure for maintaining progress through energy assessment, boundary evaluation, relationship quality review, and course correction planning. The goal isn't perfection, but consistent practice of choosing authenticity over performance, values over approval, and personal priorities over others' expectations. Conclusion. The Peaceful Rebellion. 6 months ago, Maria would have spent her Saturday morning meticulously planning an elaborate birthday party for her 7-year-old daughter, comparing herself to other parents' Pinterest-worthy celebrations and exhausting herself trying to create an Instagram-perfect experience. This Saturday, she asked her daughter what would make her happiest for her birthday. The answer was simple: pizza with my 3 best friends and a movie in our pajamas. The party cost $60 instead of $600. Her daughter declared it the best birthday ever. Maria had energy left to actually enjoy the celebration instead of managing every detail. And when she posted a casual photo of kids in pajamas eating pizza, several parents messaged her saying, "This looks so fun and relaxed. I wish I'd thought of this." This is what the peaceful rebellion looks like in practice. It's not dramatic or defiant. It's quiet and authentic. It's choosing what actually works for your life instead of what looks impressive to others. It's directing your precious energy toward what truly matters instead of dispersing it across countless concerns that don't deserve your attention. The ripple effect of your authentic living. When you stop giving unnecessary damns, the effects extend far beyond your personal peace and happiness. Your authenticity creates ripples that touch every relationship and interaction in your life. For your family, children learn that their worth isn't dependent on perfect performance or others' approval. Spouses experience a partner who shows up genuinely rather than performing for external validation. Extended family encounter someone who loves them without needing their constant approval. For your work, colleagues experience someone who contributes based on competence and values rather than politics and image management. Projects improve because energy goes toward quality results rather than impression management. Workplace culture benefits from someone who models healthy boundaries and authentic communication. For your community, friends discover they can be genuine with you rather than performing success or happiness. Social interactions become more relaxed because people don't feel judged or compared to others. Community involvement becomes more effective because your participation is based on genuine contribution rather than social obligation. For strangers, your authentic presence gives permission for others to relax their own performance. The parent at the playground who sees you calmly handling your child's meltdown feels less alone. The colleague who witnesses you setting a reasonable boundary realizes they can do the same. Research from Dr. Nicholas Christakis on social contagion shows that behaviors and attitudes spread through social networks up to 3 degrees of separation. Your authenticity influences people you've never met through the people they interact with who have been affected by your example. How your freedom gives others permission to be real. One of the most profound gifts of authentic living is the implicit permission it gives others to stop performing and start being themselves. When you model that it's safe to be imperfect, vulnerable, and genuinely human, you create space for others to do the same. This permission-giving happens in subtle but powerful ways. Conversation authenticity. When you share real struggles, instead of maintaining a perfect facade, others feel safer sharing their own challenges. Boundary modeling. When you set reasonable boundaries without guilt or over-explanation, others realize they can protect their own energy and time. Choice validation. When you make decisions based on your values rather than others' expectations, you demonstrate that authentic choices are possible. Imperfection. Acceptance. When you acknowledge mistakes and limitations without shame, you show that human fallibility is normal and manageable. Priority clarity. When you focus on what truly matters to you rather than trying to excel at everything, you illustrate that selective caring is both possible and wise. A teacher from Vancouver shared her experience. When I stopped trying to be the perfect teacher who attended every optional meeting and volunteered for every committee, I initially worried my colleagues would think I was lazy or uncommitted. Instead, 3 other teachers approached me privately to say they admired my boundaries and asked how I learned to say no to extra commitments. My authenticity gave them permission to protect their own time and energy. Why this journey never really ends. Learning to stop giving unnecessary damns isn't a destination you reach, but a practice you maintain. Life continuously presents new situations that test your commitment to authenticity. New relationships, career changes, family transitions, health challenges, social pressures, and cultural shifts. Each new situation offers opportunities to choose between old patterns of caring too much about others' opinions and newer patterns of caring strategically about what truly matters. The practice deepens and evolves as you do. The journey continues because life circumstances change. Marriage, parenthood, aging parents, career transitions, and health changes all create new boundary needs and authenticity challenges. Social pressures evolve. Technology, cultural trends, and generational differences create new forms of comparison and approval-seeking opportunities. Personal growth continues. As you develop and mature, your values, priorities, and capabilities evolve, requiring ongoing adjustment of where you direct your caring energy. Relationships develop. Deepening relationships require continued authenticity practice, while new relationships test your ability to show up genuinely from the beginning. Old patterns resurface. Stress, vulnerability, and major life events can temporarily reactivate old patterns of excessive caring, requiring conscious recommitment to authenticity. The good news is that this ongoing practice becomes easier and more natural over time. The skills strengthen with use, the benefits motivate continued practice, and the peaceful freedom becomes something you're unwilling to give up for anyone's approval. The compound effect of small acts of authenticity. The most sustainable transformation happens through small, consistent choices rather than dramatic life overhauls. Each time you choose authenticity over performance, values over approval, or personal priorities over others' expectations, you strengthen the neural pathways that support genuine living. These small acts compound over time. Daily authenticity, wearing clothes that feel good rather than impressive, expressing genuine opinions in casual conversations, taking breaks when you need them rather than when it looks dedicated. Social authenticity, declining invitations that don't energize you, sharing real responses when people ask how you're doing, posting social media content that reflects your actual life rather than curated perfection. Professional authenticity, focusing on results rather than appearing busy, setting boundaries around your availability, contributing based on your strengths rather than trying to excel at everything. Family authenticity, Expressing your actual preferences about plans and activities, setting boundaries with family members who drain your energy, making parenting choices based on your family's needs rather than other parents' expectations, financial authenticity, spending money on things you actually value rather than things that project a certain image, living within your means regardless of others' lifestyle expectations. After 2 years of practicing small acts of authenticity, a business owner from Calgary reflected, "I can't point to any single dramatic moment when everything changed, but when I look at my life now compared to 2 years ago, almost everything is different. My relationships are deeper, my work is more meaningful, my stress levels are manageable, and I actually like myself." It happened through thousands of small choices to be real instead of perfect. Your invitation to join the quiet revolution. The peaceful rebellion isn't about rejecting all social norms or becoming inconsiderate of others. It's about conscious choice, distinguishing between social expectations that serve you and ones that drain you, between caring that improves your life and caring that exhausts your resources. This rebellion is quiet because it happens in daily choices rather than dramatic gestures. It's peaceful because it's based on self-respect rather than anger or defiance. It's revolutionary because it challenges the cultural assumption that your worth depends on others' approval and that your energy belongs to whoever claims it loudest. Your invitation includes permission to disappoint. You don't need everyone's approval to make good choices for your life. Freedom to prioritize. Your time and energy are finite resources that deserve conscious allocation. Right to authenticity. You can show up as yourself rather than performing for others' comfort. Authority over your life. You're the expert on what works for your circumstances, values, and goals. Membership in community. You're joining others who choose genuine connection over superficial performance. Ongoing support. This practice continues throughout life, and you don't have to maintain it alone. The world needs more people who live authentically, set healthy boundaries, and make choices based on values rather than approval-seeking. Your individual freedom contributes to cultural change that benefits everyone. The final practice. As you close this book and continue your practice of strategic caring, remember that the goal isn't to stop caring altogether. The goal is to care consciously, authentically, and sustainably about what truly deserves your precious mental and emotional resources. You have limited time, energy, and attention. These resources are too valuable to waste on others' opinions about choices that don't affect them, perfectionist standards that don't improve outcomes, or comparative thinking that doesn't motivate productive action. Your authentic life, imperfect, genuine, and aligned with your actual values and priorities, is your gift to yourself and everyone who truly knows you. It's also your contribution to a world that desperately needs more people who choose authenticity over performance, substance over image, and meaningful connection over superficial approval. The peaceful rebellion begins with a simple decision. Today, I will care about what matters and stop caring about what doesn't. Welcome to your freedom.